So this right here, I went and cut this on the bandsaw, and that's the same thing that was done on the other one. So you want to get a nice groove in there, pretty much centered. I'm a little off center. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, is draw those lines. So hold on, give me 1 second. Try to keep this on camera. So I want to draw a line from corner to corner so I can find the center of this piece of wood, and that's going to help me put it on the lathe. All right, so there you go. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this back, and I'm going to get you adjusted to see what I'm doing here. There we go. So I'm going to take this piece and fit it right on this spindle and try to find to where it's closest to the grooves that I cut. And once I got that, I'm going to take a mallet. This has got a leather actually, it's a rawhide mallet. And I'm just going to give it a couple of whacks to seat it so that it's all the way inside, and you'll see that right there. We're all the way inside, actually inside those grooves, so this is not going to move, okay? So that's important that you get it in there the right way. The next thing I'm going to do is move this sliding portion over and find the center of my mark. So let's see if I can show you that. Kind of not going to be able to. Got to turn this camera around. I don't want to go through that hassle. But either way, I want the point of that to be right at my center. So I'm going to try to get that. Okay. Once I got it there, I want to tighten this lever right here. So I'm just going to hit it with that same rawhide mallet, right? And then if I turn this, you can see that this is actually moving into that piece of wood. I want to get it, again, seated in there the best I can, and then tighten this down so it doesn't move. And it was sliding a little bit still, so hit that a little bit more. Okay. My next adjustment is to adjust this, which is the fence. Okay. Sorry. The tool rest. Okay. I was thinking of the table saw. I did a demonstration on the table saw earlier. So the tool rest has to be adjusted. Now there's some some people like this a little bit lower so they could hold the gouge. This is a splitter. They could hold it this way with leaning down a little bit. Some people like to hold them straight. I'm more like in between both of those. So I'm going to move this just below center, tighten this down, and then this still moves. I want to make sure that this doesn't hit my tool rest. Okay, so I'm going to adjust it so that as I turn it on, it's not going to hit that tool rest. Okay, to move it by hand, and now I'm sure it's not going to hit the tool rest. Now, there's a couple of different gouges that I'm going to use. This is one, and I'm missing one. I don't know where it went. Oh, it's right there. Okay. So these two are gouges. One of them is a little bit wider than the other one. This one you can get tighter into. This one's for basically when you start cutting this, you want to use this. When you want to get more refined, you'll use this. And then this is easier to shape some other things. Now, it's important that these stay sharp, right? So earlier I went over to the grinder and sharpened the edges on these tools. Now, the first thing I want to do is take this and turn it into this. So I'm going to show you that really quick. Okay? Now, when I hold this, I want to hold it with my finger right up against the fence. And I'm usually this close, and I'm going to slide it across. And I'm using my thumb to hold it so it doesn't go in, because you want to stay steady at the same level. You don't want it to slide in or slide out or slide in. And you have to hold this sturdy enough because you don't want to slip in either. If you slip in, then all kinds of things can happen. So you want to keep it at the same level as you start your cut. Now, see, this is hitting that corner, and that's where you can get into your most dangerous situation here, because you don't want it to grab the tool and force it up, and then you'll have all kinds of problems. So you've got to be really careful and slow when you start. You don't want to get yourself into any issues with that. Okay. Apologize, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, state a couple things. In this class, for you, I want you to wear a safety shield, a face shield. Now, these become very critical when you're cutting pieces of material that have been glued together. And a lot of times you can go on YouTube and see a bunch of people turning bowls and stuff. And a lot of them are using solid piece of wood, which is this. And then to get some really interesting designs, they'll glue a bunch of different types of wood together and then put it on the lathe and cut. If the glue is not put on right, in other words, there could be some places in that piece of material where there wasn't enough glue, so it's not really holding it. That's what happens. When that happens, there's a danger of it coming apart as you're cutting. So you want to make sure that you wear a face shield when you're especially working with material that's been glued together, because there's always that potential of it exploding or coming apart while you're cutting. Or even if you're working with a solid piece of wood and you get down to where it's pretty thin, excuse me, there's the potential of it just breaking apart. So you want to make sure you wear a face shield. For you guys, I want you to wear a face shield the whole entire time while you're using it. I'm just going to have my glasses on. Normally, if I'm working with a piece of material that's been glued together, I'll put a face shield on. It's just safer, and you want to lessen the potential of getting injured while you're using the wood lathe. So face shield is something you want to wear. And I have 2 or 3 of those, so you know, 2 people can be working on a lathe. I do have the larger lathe, and just since we're here and it came to mind, this is a lathe also, but it is smaller, a lot smaller. So you can do all kinds of projects in these. I've had students do writing pins. You know, they'll cut a small piece of wood, drill a hole in it, put all the pin components in it, and then you get a nice pin out of this. Other things that you can do with this, wine tops, you know, to close off a wine bottle once you open, all kinds of different things. So we do have a small lathe. All the parts are the same. They don't change from the small lathe to the larger lathe. It's just the capacity for doing big projects. You want to do it on the big lathe. If you want to do something a little smaller, you do it on the small lathe right here. It's all the same stuff. Even the gouges are smaller when you're using the small lathe. So we have a small lathe and a larger lathe. All right, so let's get back to this. Right there. All right, so the first thing I want to do is spin it with my hand to make sure it's not hitting. Then normally I stand away from it when I turn it on just to make sure that I'm not going to get injured in any way. So I'm going to stand off. Usually I'm standing on that side, but here we go. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you noticed, but I did. It's a little wobbly on this side, and that's because I missed my center when I seated it or when I cut it. So it's critical that you find the center of the wood so that you'll have less of that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this using that large gouge and try to get it as round as possible. So here we go. Now, I want you to notice that when I'm cutting this, okay, I'm just shifting my weight from my left foot to my right foot and staying in the same area, dragging this across. Now, I don't want to be right here, right in front of it. Okay, always put it to the side. Two things happen. Less of a potential of me getting injured because I'm not directly in front of this machine. I'm always standing off to the side so that my body is away from the potential from getting injured. So you want to make sure you do that. All right, here we go. When I start, I want to start in slowly till I hear it. And once I hear it, I want to drag it across evenly, not letting it bounce around. And at the beginning, you want to start slow. Now, once I get the corners off, and you can see that it's starting to get round, and you can see that this area right here is pretty round, and this area isn't, all right? And that's because of how I put it on here. It's just not, it's not straight. So once I get the corners off, I can start to apply a little bit more pressure on the cutting tool to take off more material. But when I first start, I'm going just a little bit. As soon as I hear it, then I start dragging it across. The main thing is you never want to be in a hurry. You always want to take your time when you're using a power tool, because if you're in a hurry, the potential for getting injured goes way up. So you want to slow things down. And what I like to tell students is you don't get extra credit for finishing fast. Okay? It's better that you take your time and you do a good job rather than doing it fast, raising the potential for injury, and then you're not going to get as good as a good project out of it also, because you'll have a lot of mistakes. So hold on. So I'm going to try to get this down to where it's round and then go from there. Sorry. The other thing is that you see how this has a gap? I can fit my finger in there. I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, okay? So I want to get it to where, you know, there's just about an eighth or so of distance between the whole thing. Then tighten it down, because I don't want that gap to get pretty wide. Again, you're increasing the potential for an accident if you're really far away, if the tool rest is really far away from your stock. So you want to make sure that you stop periodically and move the fence closer to what you're cutting. Now one way to tell if it's completely round, it looks round, but it's not. So if this bounces in any way, and I can feel it bouncing, that's telling me that I'm not quite there yet. Hear that knocking noise? Okay, it should be smooth, and that way I know it is completely round. I got a little bit still. So the slower you move, the cleaner cut you're going to get. And that's pretty round all the way around. Now, you want to make sure that this is the same size, and these are calipers, this just. So you use that to figure out, if you're the same size all the way down. So I've got a lot of clearance there, not so much there, then it falls off, then it gets tighter. So I got a low spot here and a low spot there. That means that I want to try to straighten this out wherever it's wider. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to go ahead and try to make this same ball that I showed you earlier on this, so you guys can see that process. So I'm going to use this caliper to kind of measure where it's at. So that's the distance I want. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this so that I know that that ball is going to be that wide. So I'm just going to put my pencil right there, turn it on for a second, mark it, find my other mark, which is right there. So mark that. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see, but I have two marks there, and that's going to be where I'm going to put the ball. So I'm going to use the divider tool to cut in here and cut in there, and I'll show you that. So the trick here is I want to put it on this side of the line, then on that side of the line. And then as I'm cutting, I'm not going to just drive it all the way in because that'll heat up the tool, and then I'll lose my tip. In other words, it'll dull the tip. So you'll see the process. I'm going to go a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, back out, backing in, and then that allows it to cool off. So I'm cutting a little bit, backing it off a little bit, letting it cool down, just so that the tool doesn't heat up. I'm trying to keep it as square as possible as I'm cutting. want to leave about a ½ inch or so. And the tool does get hot, so alright, there you go. Now I'm going to take this smaller gouge to take this down and then take that down on the other side. I'm using this tool now. I want to try to get it to meet in the center. So that's the mark I'm shooting for. That's pretty close. Now eventually if I wanted to get this cut off, what I would do is keep going. Okay. I would just keep going with this until this just cut off and rolled off, and same thing here, cut off and rolled off. But I got a pretty good ball going right here, so I'm going to move this out of the way and start using sandpaper. You don't want to sand with the tool rest connected. You want it totally out of the way so that, again, nothing is going to get caught up in here and you have a potential for it to, something to go wrong. You don't want that to happen. So the less that happens, the better off you're going to be. Okay, just remember, this is 150. This is 100, and excuse me, I'm going to start with the 100 grit. Hold on one second. So just fold it in half, and then turn the the lathe on, and just grab it at either end. You don't want to hold right on there because the sandpaper does get hot. Try to get as much of the grooves off of there as possible. I'm going to 150. And that's the process. Anytime you're sanding, you want to start with the roughest grit you have and then move down to whatever the more finer grit is as you go, so you get a nice finish. .220. I actually have some 400 here. I'm going to go ahead and sand with that also. Normally you wouldn't go down to 400. You would just use the 220 and then put a finish coat on it. So that looks pretty nice. It's pretty smooth. Now, I'll show you how pretty that is in 1 second. I'm just going to put some water on my hands and then wipe it on there. And normally you would do the same thing to anything that you've done so that the grain comes off. But you can see that, okay? That looks very nice, and you could actually do wax right on here, right? But normally you'd wet it with your hands, and what's going to happen is once I turn this on, it's going to dry off. And as it dries, the grain starts to come up, right? And then you can hit it with the sandpaper one more time to get all the grain that's popping out with the water, and you'll get a nice smoother finish to that. Okay, so a couple things. This right here spins onto this spindle, and these holes I'll show you can drill it onto a block of wood or a round piece of wood, like if you're doing a bowl or something. This is what this is for, right? So you can cut bigger pieces on this machine using this. Okay, there is we have this spindle that has these teeth on it, and it doesn't hold very well, so I'm not too happy. This is a very old one. There are newer ones that hold a lot better. I tried to hold it on this side, and it just slipped off of there, so I think that I might just purchase another one of these. The newer ones are a lot better so that we can turn bowls with that, and that way you don't have to do the drill process and put holes in it, because it limits you to how far you can go down. If I got screws going through this and it's going through the wood, however deep, that's as far as I can go, because I don't want to hit the screws. So when you're cutting a bowl, you got to make sure that you're not going too far so that it doesn't hit the screws, because that can ruin your tools, your gouges. It can really mess them up. Now, this is just basic stuff for the lathe. So you want to make sure that if you're going to use a lathe, there's all kinds of stuff on the internet that you can get to get some more help on how to do this, use this tool. Again, this is just basic, really beginner stuff. So the more you use it, the better you'll get, the more beautiful stuff you can do with the lathe. So that's it for this particular tool. You have to upload your video notes to Google Classroom. GoPro, stop recording.